Hello everyone, welcome to the Devil's Verdict. So I want to go back to the summer of 2013, the first summer for 26 years without Sir Alex, and for the first time in 10 years without David Gill. It was now over to David Moyes, a well-respected Premier League manager, and Ed Woodward, an absolute nobody in the world of football, but a prominent figure in the industry that brought the country to its knees in 2008. That's the banking industry, and he was of course a banker with a capital W. In that first summer post Sir Alex, regardless of your opinion of Moyes, he needed 4 or 5 players to make the team his own and to start to regenerate a team that was on the edge of a cliff for anyone else who wasn't the best manager in the history of sport, and the first opportunity for a chief executive novice to prove himself. Woodward's first attempt at proving himself was a derisory joint bid of 28 million for Baines and Fellaini that infuriated Everton. That was a bid of 16 million for Fellaini and 12 million for Baines, who at the time was one of the best left backs in the Premiership. Woodward eventually signed Fellaini on deadline day for 27.5 million, ludicrously 4 million more than his buyout clause, which had to be triggered by the 31st of July of that summer. A final day panic buy for Fellaini proved to be United's only significant signing of the summer. On the same day, Manchester United attempted to sign Andy Hira from Athletic Bilbao. According to Moyes, United ditched the deal because the 30.5 million buyout clause was too much for the player. However, Woodward signed Hira 12 months later for 29 million. This bizarre Woodward logic to sign Fellaini for 4 million more than his buyout clause, and then sign Hira 12 months later for only 1.5 million less than his buyout clause, with Hira paying compensation to Bilbao to compensate that, has been an ever-present in Woodward's approach to bringing players to United. The deal that would have laid down the gauntlet would have been the world record signing of Gareth Bale. Despite the stories of having a helicopter on standby for Bale, the ponderous, clueless approach of Woodward meant by the time United showed interest in Bale, he was Real Madrid's bar the signing. In fact, the only reason the door opened for United was because Daniel Levy was so infuriated with Real Madrid for building their presentation stand for the Bale unveiling before they completed the signing. He was happy to sell to anyone, including United, but by then Bale was set on Madrid. Woodward would have known for months before the 2013 summer transfer window he was going to be in charge of United, and Bale should have been his priority signing. The lack of planning, foresight and expertise demonstrated in this window was a sign of things to come. Over the period in which Woodward has been in charge, one of the biggest flaws is the clear disconnect between the scouting and the decision making into who we eventually sign. Scouting players for long periods and deciding not to sign them, or losing out on them because of Woodward's ponderous approach, has been a common theme. The question has to be asked, why are we scouting players for a full season and then deciding not to sign them? Why aren't we establishing earlier that they aren't the right players for us? Are our scouts good enough? The reality is the scouts seem to be identifying the best talent, but we are not following through with the right decisions when the club are in possession of all the scouting reports. And it's absolute fact that Woodward has the final say on every single transfer decision at United. Former Manchester United Chief of Youth Recruitment, Derek Langley, who was at the club for 16 years, mostly during Sir Alex Ferguson's days, recommended Matthias de Ligt and Frankie de Jong to Manchester United. They were both subsequently turned down. Even though Woodward himself didn't turn the players down, after telling Woodward quite straight about the competence of certain people at the club, 6 months later Langley was sacked from his position. That is a decision that has subsequently shaped the recruitment of young players, and we don't seem to be plucking the best ones out as we used to. Across the whole of the 2015-16 season, we scouted Renato Sanchez and was a constant name linked with United and was supposed to be a shoo-in for us. Yet from nowhere, Bayern Munich swiped in and stole him. Now you may be thinking that was a good thing when you see how Sanchez's career has gone, but after his performances in the 2016 Euros, I'm pretty sure most United fans like myself were feeling this was another one that got away. Another United scout, Jorge Alvial, filed 40 scouting reports on Alphonso Davies before he eventually signed for Bayern Munich for around 10 million in 2018. Now if a scout is making 40 reports on a player, either one or two things has to happen. You either take the advice and sign the player, or sack the scout for wasting time. Manchester United clearly don't have the same vision as other clubs when assessing players. That leads to indecision and dithering, resulting in these players signing for other clubs while we sleep. But the most concerning one for me, believe it or not, was Bruno Fernandes. Everyone knew that United was scouting him for all of the 2018-19 season. He was continually linked with us, and we all hoped Woodward would get the deal done. Not only does Woodward fail to sign Bruno, but he tells everybody that we were never interested in him and it was all the Portuguese press, and us United fans are left licking our wounds once again. However, 6 months later, not only did we sign him, but we were told that it was a summer signing brought forward. So how did we go from the summer transfer window closing and supposedly not wanting him, to the January transfer window opening and signing him as a summer signing brought forward? It's almost comical, but represents a lack of direction and decisive decision making that is killing United. And the reality is the acquisition of Bruno was complete luck, that no one else, for whatever reason, was in for him. Otherwise, Woodward's ponderous, dithering, clueless approach would have cost us again. As far as negotiations are concerned, I feel the last four signings have been the type that will slowly move us in the right direction. However, I really feel we have been very lucky in acquiring these players, mainly because no one else was really in for James, Wan-Bissaka, Maguire and Fernandes. Newcastle and Bournemouth were interested in James, but would never be able to compete with United for a player. Manchester City would only go to 60 million for Maguire, so United pretty much had a clear run at him. No one else wanted Wan-Bissaka, and for whatever reason no one really made a concrete offer for Fernandes. Even then, Woodward made a meal of all of them. In the case of Wan-Bissaka, Maguire and Fernandes, it was the standard Woodward approach. Start off with a derisory offer well below what the player is worth. Spend the next 6 weeks making small incremental increases, and then after 6 weeks pay the price the selling club wanted 6 weeks before. That is exactly why United are incapable of getting 2 to 3 deals over the line in a summer transfer window. The reality is Woodward hasn't got the required knowledge of the football transfer system and negotiation skills to compete for the best players when other clubs are in for them. As I mentioned earlier, the acquisitions of the last four signings were a product of other clubs not wanting those players, or prepared to go to the asking price of the selling clubs, leaving the way clear for United to sign those players, and in that scenario, not even Woodward could cost us. If we were in a race for those players, there is no way Woodward's approach would be able to compete. The ship would have already sailed well before Woodward arrived at the port. When you look at how efficient Manchester City are in the transfer market, Guardiola was furious with the Manchester City hierarchy for missing out on Frankie de Jong, saying the club need to be quicker and smarter. In comparison, where does that leave Woodward and United? If we step away from Woodward's incompetence in inquiring players, it never ceases to amaze me at his inability to manage what is right in front of him, and that is the current United players and their contracts. Last season, United had 11 players out of contract in the summer of 2019. They were Martial, Shaw, Mata, De Gea, Young, Valencia, Hira, Smalling, Jones, Pereira and Darmian. Now you may think that losing the majority of those would have been a good thing, but the assessment of the squad should be an ongoing thing. If all of those players decided to leave United, it would have been catastrophic for the squad because we would never have been able to replace more than 3 of them because of the way Woodward negotiates for players. 18 to 24 months out from the end of contracts, players should be assessed to decide if they are likely to be given a new contract or not. If they are, negotiations will start to take place in that penultimate year of their contract. If they are unlikely to get a new contract, Woodward should be looking to sell them with 2 years left to go to get the maximum transfer fee for them. But to miss that last realistic chance to sell them and get to a point where you lose them for free is just complete negligence. It makes me wonder how Woodward allowed 11 first team squad members to get to the last year of their contracts without establishing if they are staying or leaving. Did he spill his cup of tea on a file and in the process of wiping it down saw that it contained players' contracts who expire in a matter of months? Who knows? The result of this was throwing money at players we should have let go, like Smalling, Young and Jones, while neglecting the players we should have been prioritising, such as Hira and De Gea. The consequence of this was losing the one player we didn't want to lose, in Hira, having to give Mata a new contract to try and convince De Gea to stay, who eventually signed quite late, and we are now stuck with players like Jones and Pereira on lucrative contracts who most clubs wouldn't take for free. Who in their right mind would match a player like Jones's contract and pay a fee? Luckily for us, Smalling has done well for Roma and put himself in the shop window, and we got rid of Young. It has to be pointed out that transfers and contract negotiations are all under Woodward's remit, and he is failing year in, year out in what he is being paid to manage. One of the most disappointing negotiation blunders under Woodward was when United virtually had the now much in demand Dayot Upamecano in their back pocket to only alter the terms of the deal at the last minute. Upamecano's agent stated that United promised him a flat, which was changed to a host stay with a family and only 6 return trips for his parents. Upamecano's agent felt that this wasn't a stable enough environment for his clients, considering he was moving to a foreign country. As a result, he signed for Liefering of Austria, the feeder club for Red Bull Salzburg. The reason I picked this out of the numerous examples of Woodward's incompetence is because United in the past have been seen as a class act when dealing with young players. So to see a young player treated in this way is very disappointing, and probably one of the reasons why United drafted Sir Alex in to meet with Bellingham to offset Woodward's presence. When I look at the transfer activity of United during the Woodward era and the type of players we have purchased, it seems from a footballing perspective that we don't know who we want and why we want them. Woodward has targeted more high-profile players to fuel the commercial side of the club. How many Colombian staff to follow United when they signed Falcao? But how does all that add up to producing a successful team? It doesn't. We have accumulated an expensive mishmash of players and consequently find ourselves putting square pegs into round holes. For a club that is world famous for their wide men, at this moment in time, we only have one out-and-out winger in Dan James. The square pegs into round holes is Martial and Rashford playing out there. As United fans, we know we need another winger and Sancho fits the bill perfectly. However, I'm not sure that's why Woodward wants him. United missed out on him last season because we were not in the Champions League. So were United desperate for a wide man? Why didn't Woodward sign someone else once he failed to sign Sancho? Has Sancho been identified as a player to strengthen the position we are weak in, or has he been identified as a player to aid Woodward's commercial project? I feel that if we fail to sign Sancho again, Woodward probably hasn't got an alternative lined up. Time will tell on that, but we have seen this time and time again from Woodward, chasing big name players like Bale, Ronaldo and Sancho, and when Woodward fails to bring them in, there is no backup, and we then have shortfalls in the squad. United fans have gone into most transfer windows with high hopes, only to be disappointed. This was evident again in the summer of 2015, when Sergio Ramos was stolen on a new contract with Real Madrid, and Woodward put a bid in for him, stating that this deal was nothing to do with Real's attempt to sign De Gea. When Ramos eventually got his new contract with Real, and consequently turning United down, we didn't then sign a different centre-back. So why did we go for Ramos? My overall feeling of the Woodward project is that for as long as he's in charge of football affairs, we will never win the Premier League again, unless we get lucky and acquire a genius manager. Woodward has recently stated that he and the Glazers are in it for the long haul. This is terrible news for us United fans. In October 2019, Woodward stated that it's an insult to suggest that football people do not make football decisions at United. However, when Jose wanted a central defender in the summer of 2018, Woodward said no because he had signed Bailly Lindelof. That's a footballing decision. Sacking Derek Langley was a footballing decision. So unless Woodward sees himself as a football person, it is clear that the non-footballing person that is Woodward is making the majority of the footballing decisions. In a recent interview in February, Woodward makes reference to the number of exciting youth acquisitions when projecting the supposed bright future of United. Not only is this more spin and propaganda to paint a rosy picture at United, but how can he possibly be in a position to talk about any prospect at the club? Did he scout them himself? Does he coach them? He has probably never even seen any of them play, but is qualified to tell us how good they are. But this is typical Woodward. Everything is going to be good, but never is in the here and now. My final observation is the undeserved adulation and credit Woodward has received for United's commercial success, which he has recently and conveniently let everybody know that this is the reason United are able to maintain financial strength during this lockdown period. Way before Woodward arrived at United, we were the richest or one of the richest clubs in the world, posting record revenues year on year. United were the pioneers of commercialising football and exploring and finding new revenue streams. United haven't gone from nowhere to the richest club in the world under his regime. It was already there, so the credit he has received for this is completely misguided. The Ed Woodward Project can be summarised in one comment he made to American investors in 2008. Playing performance doesn't really have a meaningful impact on what we can do on the commercial side. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe to get the channel going, and let me know below in the comments section what you think about the Ed Woodward Project. Cheers, bye.